You're listening to The Odd Couple with Lori Ross and Vikram Diol.
Hey everybody, my name is Vikram Diol and my co-host is Lori Ross and we are The Odd Couple.
And today we're talking about time blocking. How exciting!
It's probably one of the least exciting things to talk about. It's so valuable as you start to grow your business and as you start to grow your career, because people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. Think about your time. If you put a value on it, and I don't know if we've talked about this in the past or not. I know that I talked to a lot of people that I've coached over the years, but if you don't put a value on your time, then time means nothing to you. And so,
can I interrupt for just a second? Because I know there's a difference between action planning and time blocking. So there is a difference, correct? Can you explain that a little bit before we get into it?
So when I look at time blocking, when you talk about action planning, can you kind of elaborate what you mean? Well,
because I know when I sit down and kind of create my step-by-step or my list of things to do, is time blocking then kind of the next, breaking it down into smaller pieces? Is that how that kind of works? It just kind of creates this outline for you to follow, or how does that work?
So I'm glad you brought that up. So to-do lists are stress lists. If you think about your to-do list, does it typically bring you joy, or does it just cause you kind of like, oh my God, I got all these things to do?
Are you asking me that question? I actually find a sense of relief when I have a list because it gets me out of my swirling thoughts in my head and my anxiety, and kind of creates these little bullet points for me to follow. But sometimes at the end of the day, it is overwhelming if I do too many things. And so I actually kind of reverse that, and I'll do an accomplishment list just to give myself a pat on the back and be like, oh, I got this stuff done today. But yeah, I try not to make my list too big, and I make it more reasonable for my day because I do have a family. So I try to bullet it out and balance it out based on what I know, what time I do have.
We make these lists of things that we need to do, and it's great to get stuff out of your head. It's so important to get it out of your head, because once it's out of your head, you free yourself, right? Better out than in. So once you are able to free yourself of that stress of, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. I mean, I have to-do lists as well, but then you have to take that and you have to say, okay, what do I want to chunk in? Like, what do I want in my life? Do I want to be healthy? Okay, so I need to develop a health bucket. Do I want to be financially well? Okay, I need to have a financial bucket. Do I own my own business? Okay, then you have different buckets for your business. Do I have a family? Yes, I have to have different buckets for my family. And so as you start to chunk different categories of your life, then you can start to fit into other portions into that bucket of time. Does that make sense?
Right. So you're kind of weaving it all in together, to get all of, to kind of check all the buckets. And are you saying like maybe like do a little bit of each for each bucket each day?
Well, you create your categories. So there's things that are going to keep you in what we call the zone, and there's the things that are going to keep you out of the zone. So the things that keep you in the zone are the things that really give you fulfillment. So for me, it's going to the gym, it's working out, it's doing meditation, it's doing, it's to read. I mean, I could literally spend a whole day reading, but then I feel really let down because I feel like I didn't accomplish other things. 3 or 4, 5 zones, whatever you want to call it. There's the non-urgent zone, right? Not urgent, not important, right? And if you think about that zone, and if you were to really think about the last week of your life, what were the things you did that were not urgent and not important, but you did them anyways? And then if you think about how much time you spent on those items, it adds up to, for some people, a lot, for some people, a little bit, but you have to see how much time you spent on those.
No, I was just saying I like the word time dump, because I know a lot of people get stuck on their phones too, like the social media and stuff like that. So, making sure I try to allocate when I'm on social media that I'm actually investing my time in my business pages and also my clients and everything. But man, I can sure time block some time to do that. And then I get so distracted, and then it just becomes, I'm just dumping time into this empty vat.
One of the things that I used to do when I was heavily cold calling and dialing for dollars, I would do 90-minute power sessions. And I would do a 90-minute power session, and then I would take a 10 to 15-minute break. And I always have, before I sit down, I would always have something in front of me. Like right now we have our podcast. So I was running a few minutes behind because I had to make my tea. and I knew my energy was a little bit low this morning.
I know I had to pump you up this morning. The tea had to pump you up too. We had to get really excited about this topic.
Well, and I could literally talk about this for 4 or 5 hours. It is really that important. But if you think about it, for sake of time here, I want to get through the zones or get to the zone and just talk about some things. But as you go through this exercise, pause it and say, hey, what was non-urgent and what was not important, and what did I do and how much time did I spend? And that could be drinking, that could be arguing, that could be a lot of times we do things that aren't urgent and not important because it takes us away from what we really need to do. That's social media, it's watching TV.
Well, and the fear of missing out, too, that FOMO. I mean, a lot of people will rearrange their lives just because they feel like they're missing out on something when really they should be missing out on this so they can actually be investing in this over here. FOMO.
Totally. Yeah, and that's a big thing. So that's why you get stuck into social media because it's, A, they've created it to be addicting. 2, phones are highly addictive. And, for a lot of people, they spend a lot of time there. So then you go to the next. So if you look at it as a ring, and you have 4 layers. So you have the center ring, like a target. Then you have an outer ring, one more outer ring, and then one more outer ring. So you have 4 outer rings. So the very farthest one is non-urgent zone, not urgent, not important. Then you have one zone in closer. It's the urgent and not important one. So the not urgent and not important, that's the distraction zone.
So why would you even have a not important zone? Like, is it just to kind of get it out of your head? Because I would think, why would you even acknowledge that if it's not important?
So have you ever seen your phone and you had a whole bunch of missed calls and then you had a bunch of text messages and you had Facebook messages and you had voicemails and all you want to do is sit down and eat dinner, but you see your phone and it's like blowing up with ding, 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 and you're compelled to go and grab it?
Yes. Because it's almost like Pavlov's dogs. You just are trained.
Right. So our 99.9% of the times are those truly, truly super important things that you have to get to right away?
Well, I guess that depends. No, probably not. Probably not. Because my family comes first.
There are times where you will have to drop everything. I mean, in my world, there were times where literally we had an escrow that if the escrow company did not have somebody go and drive their car, actually it was a lender who took the final documents, they just bypassed escrow and they literally had to drive to the county to record the recording numbers because the seller of the home that our buyer was buying said, we're not going to give you guys any extensions. And so it was very urgent and it was very important. And those phone calls were very urgent and very important. But 90% of the time, I would say maybe even 95% of the time, I get a phone call and I feel so compelled to pick it up. And it's urgent because the phone's ringing, but it's not necessarily like life or death important.
Got it.
So
acknowledging is a good thing so you can kind of define what's a priority and what's not.
Right. And think about it this way. So one of my mentors told me something, and it was reinforced yesterday with Tony Robbins. I'm listening to his RPM series right now for one of my coaching.
What does RPM stand for?
R stands for results, the P stands for purpose, and the M stands for massive action plan or a map.
Cool.
So it's results, purpose, map, massive action. Basically, it's what do I want, why do I want it, and then what's my map to get it. So what do I want? It's important because most of us don't define what we want. Why do I want it? That's your purpose. That's what's going to give you the power. It's what's going to give you the gasoline to move forward in tough times. And then what's the map? What's the plan to get around it? That's going to be super important to keep you on track when things go astray. But zone 2 is what is called the delusion zone because you're delusional that it's important and it's urgent. So for me, it's phone calls, emails, text messages. We tend to make things in the real estate world and actually in any sales business that I've been, I tend to make every phone call the most critical phone call ever, and I have to pick it up. I have to have my cell phone on me. I have to check the text message. I have to know why my phone made a buzz. I have to know why my phone dinged. I got to know why somebody sent me a Facebook message. These are things that I had to respond to right away instead of just putting a time in my schedule. So today I have calls from 9 o'clock in the morning with you to about 12:30. So I set, a little bit of time in between to take a lunch break, rehydrate myself, re-energize myself with a light lunch. And then 12:30 to 1, I have emails. And then from 1 to 3, I have some other things that I need to do for another business. So I take all the email answering. So now I can turn off my email I can shut out my Outlook. I can put my phone on silent. I know that I'll respond to emails between about 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock while I'm eating food. So that's for me to do at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think this is, we were talking about investing time, but I also feel like it does bring a sense of peace too, knowing that everything's, you have this kind of infrastructure to get you through the day, and you know that you did everything you could in those time blocks that you're not supposed to do, but that you wanted to do.
That's what it's about. To-do list is what kind of keeps you in that stress zone. You know, when you look at your to-do list, it typically puts you in a stress zone. So you take the things that are really important in your life that will actually move the needle forward. And then you figure out, okay, how do I make sure I do those first? And then I can do the stuff that's secondary afterwards. And for a lot of people, I know they're going to say, Vikram, you're crazy. You know, we can't, but you got to get leverage over your life. So the third zone is the urgent and important zone, right? So the urgent and important zone. And this is where I feel I spent a lot of time, and I feel a lot of people I know spend a lot of time. It's urgent and it's important. It's kind of, if you think about it from high school or college, you had to write a term paper, and the term paper was due 3 days from now. And, you know, if like you're in high school, your mom's like, why didn't you do this earlier? You're like, I don't know, Mom. She's like, the very next question always was, well, how long have you known about this for? And that's the moment where you're like, oh, shoot, I'm going to get smacked upside the back of my head with the high heel again. Because you've had this project. Yeah, I always told my mom from across the house because her aim was horrible. But you know, she's like, "How long did you have to do this science project or this paper?" And I'm like, "Well, just a little bit of time. You know, 6 months." So if you know about something, you can plan it out, and when you plan it out the right way and you time block for it, you actually get time back into your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that you actually create more time for yourself to do the things that outside of the business and the leisure time. I know from experience, because I used to not time block and just kind of let the universe, and I think I said this, I was a former free spirit. I still a free spirit, but like when you break it down and kind of inventory where your time's going at first, because I think if you kind of just look to time block what's actually happening, like, oh, from 10 to 5, I watched TV and did laundry or something. And then you can actually change that and realize that you're actually wasting time for what your dreams are. Now, if you want to do that, that's totally fine. But that's not what I want to be doing. I want to be investing it towards something and get the payoff from that. Because that's really what we're trying to do, right? Is get the payoff from our time investment.
And it's get to the zone. To me, it's getting to a zone where I'm doing what I need to do, but I'm getting fulfillment out of it, and I'm still doing the other items in my world. I mean, I have to eat. I have to have clean underwear. I have to have pressed shirts when I go to certain meetings. So I can't neglect certain things, and right now I don't have an assistant to go and take my dry cleaning. I don't have an assistant to book my flight. So I have to do that on my own. So I have to put that into my schedule as if it's a personal thing or if it's a business thing, I have to put it in there. And if it's put into my schedule, then I'll do it, and I don't have stress around it. But if I just look at my to-do list and there's 75 items in there. So the third zone it's the dimension of demand zone. You're constantly being put on, like, I got to do this. And again, if it's something that came up today that has to get done today and there is no way to plan around it, sure, you got to drop everything and go take care of it, right? If you got kids and your kid breaks their leg, that is obviously important and urgent, and that wasn't something you could plan for. A lot of things, though, that in my world that I know that I do, I just didn't plan properly for it, and so it becomes urgent and it becomes important because I didn't plan for it or I didn't foresee it coming. So as you become a problem solver, you start to foresee issues that could arise, and you put in little, I don't know, if you trade stocks, you put in sell limits. So if the stock market's dropping, but you think there might be a small rally and you bought the stock for $1 and now the stock's $1.10, but it's dropping fast, you put a stop limit to sell it at $1.02. And so that way you still get a little bit of the upside. You didn't get as much as the upside, but if you think it's going to rally higher, so you put in these little safety barks in there. But that's kind of but when you start to foresee the problems that could come from what you're working on, you can put in some metrics so that if they do happen, you already know what to do. But typically when you plan for the worst doesn't happen. because you're already ready for it. So you've already put in all the measures so that that doesn't happen. It's when you don't plan for the worst happens, because when you started the process, you didn't really start it the way you should have. And you're kind of just running by the seat of your pants. Does that make sense?
Are all time block plans kind of tentative though? Because if we see these zones, like they could kind of jump into different zones at different times, right? So it's just over time is what you're saying is you'll get better and better at your time blocking because you've got more experience in what you're doing. Is that kind of what you're saying?
You figure out what's really important and what moves the needle. So if you're a salesperson, we all technically are salespeople. Let's talk about health. Okay, let's talk about health. For most people, health becomes important because all of a sudden now they had a heart attack and now they need to, oh my God, I got to change everything. Well, it's a lot harder to change your health when you need to. It's a lot easier to change your health when you don't need to. So when you're young and you're thinking about what do I want when I'm 65, 70, 80, 90, 100, we're going to live to 110, 120, 130. We're going to start living much longer lives, people. So you heard it here first if you hadn't. 10 o'clock, whatever time you listen to, 11 o'clock, whatever time you listen to this, you are going to live a much longer life. So get ready for that, because what we do today impacts what happens in 50 years. Health isn't important and urgent for most people at 30 years old. It's urgent and important at 60 when you have a heart attack. But if you start doing things at 30, yes, it's important, but it's not urgent. Does that make sense? So going to the gym, meditating, reading, self-development, those are all important things, and those should always be in your schedule. If you're a salesperson, you should always have prospecting in your schedule. Those are things that are very important. If you're a doctor, you should have in your schedule time to read medical articles and medical tests and new technology that's coming out that might be able to help your clients. That wouldn't be in your self-development per se. That would be in your professional development block. You see what I'm saying?
No, I understand. And I guess I'm looking for very specific advice when it comes for business for me. And I know that this show is for both of us as well. So for me, for business, what would a great time block calendar look like? I mean, is it every day?
Every day.
Every day. Okay.
Right. You brush your teeth every day. You wipe your butt every day. Well, you should. So
yes, that does happen.
If you're not, hit me up. I can help you with that. But you really should have your calendars blocked out, because if you don't, you're going to go from one day to the next and you're going to forget what was important and you're going to not do it because something else is going to come up and it's going to feel important. It's going to feel urgent and you're going to feel like you need to do it right now when everything else is going to go on hold.
But you're saying too, time block in time with your family and time for health, and make sure that you're including these things that are fulfilling for yourself and nourishing for yourself. Those are just as important.
Depending on where you're at in life, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's
depending on where you're at in life, you're going to spend more time in certain areas and less time in certain areas. So if you're at a point in your life where you're building your business, you're not going to have as much time for your family. So when you have family time, you really want to make sure you plan out that family time so that you're really getting everything out of that 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours a week, whatever it is, because you want to make sure you're giving them your all when you're there. And that way you're planning throughout your whole day and week that, okay, 5 o'clock is time for Johnny. He's got his play. I know that I got to do da-da-da-da-da-da. You do what you need to do because you know what's going to move your needle. And you say, you know what, screw that other shit. That's not important. Johnny's my 5 o'clock. You put everything to the side and you watch Johnny for 2 hours and you don't pull out your cell phone. And that way you're fully there for Johnny. And then when you're done, you give Johnny a kiss on the head. You say, Daddy's got to go back to work or Mommy's got to go back to work. I love you. You did awesome. And he sees you from the crowd, because if you've ever been on stage, the kids always know where their parents are sitting.
They're always looking.
And they don't look at anybody else in the audience but Mom and Dad. And the minute Dad puts his head down, Dad could be watching for 99 minutes. The minute he puts his head down and looks at his phone, Johnny notices, and Johnny's mood goes crush. And the whole play that you watched for 99 minutes was great, but he forgets all about it. He only remembers that 1 minute.
And you're spot on. That actually happened with my son at a concert. My husband had to go out and take a call, and that one he had gotten up and went outside, and then he was crushed for the whole afterwards. He was crying. He's like, Dad left the show, and you're spot on with that.
You got to know where you're at in life, and so the way that you create your mind about what's important, RPM, when you really think about it and you really ask yourself the question, what do I want? Why do I want it? And what's my map? You'll start to see that other things don't really matter as much as you thought they did. And all of a sudden, it's not as important to do this and it is to do that. And time is going to change, right? So there's going to things that come up in your schedule. So I didn't go to the gym this morning, so I'm going to go at 4:30. So I know that I have to rearrange my day a little bit, but I look at my things of importance. Okay, I have business. I have the podcast. I want to go to my garden every single day and give love to my plants because that gives me love. I want to meditate. I want to do certain things. So I know that when I look at my day, I rearrange the blocks and I say, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And you always ask yourself, right? But you always start, it's reverse engineering again at its best, but you always start with the result first. What do I want? What do I want? Then you get the why do I want it? And then you get the plan around what you're going to do with it. But if you start with the plan, you don't know where you're going. You don't know the results. So you always start with the results in mind. Then you get the purpose, which gives you the power. Then you get the massive action plan, which gives you the, okay, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If this happens, I'm going to do that. If this happens, I'm going to do that.
Well, and I like it because it breaks it down into really small steps, so it doesn't actually feel overwhelming. Because even an action plan can be feel like these giant steps, but when you break it down into time blocking, these are really like baby steps that you're doing of investment that are going to pay off huge in the long run. But I know, speaking of time blocking, I know that you have a very busy day today and you have another meeting. Well, we got
the final zone, so we got
okay,
5 more minutes.
let's cover that.
So we got the final zone, which is the target zone, right? And that's the zone of fulfillment. And these are things that are important but have become not urgent. So because you've been able to schedule your life the way you need to, and you're able to fulfill your time session the way that you should, now you can do things that are important, but they are no longer urgent, and that gives you a lot of fulfillment. So when you have the time blocked out in your schedule to go to the gym, it's important at my age, but it's not urgent. So if I miss a day of the gym, I'm not going to die, but at 65 years old, if I miss a day of doing the right thing, it really has a catastrophic effect on me. If you think about the things that are important in your life and that give you fulfillment, then you can start to really see where you want to be. So you have not urgent zone. You have the urgent and not important, which is the delusional zone. You have the urgent and important, which is the dimension of demand zone. And then you just have the final, which is the target zone, which is just the zone. And when you're in the zone, you know you're in the zone. Like you don't got to ask the baseball player if they were in the zone. You could see by their results, like they were in the zone. They're just, every time they're up to bat, crush, 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 crush. They're in the zone and they're getting fulfillment out of it. So you want to find the time to be in the zone, and that's when you're going to get the most out of fulfillment. Well,
I'm glad thank you for going over those again. And they're really important to actually find out what you want. I mean, that's really the first step, is to figure out what you want. And then I know we say this a lot, but reverse engineer it, and you can go down to the littlest steps through time blocking. It's actually, I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I have like one thing on my calendar today, even though I had this appointment with you and everything else. And I was like, I need to be more specific with what I want to do with my business. And I do have goals that I want to do, but if I don't put them in my calendar, they're not going to get done. So thank you for inspiring me today. I definitely felt like the student listening today and had a lot of questions. So thank you for answering those. But
and just remember, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, I was just going to give people your info, your digits, so they can get out. Because I think
we'll put that in the show notes. But remember, take your life and put it into blocks. So you have your personal finance, you have your business finance, you have your personal health, you have your business health, you have your personal development, you have business development. Look at the big categories in your life, because that's what's going to help keep you aligned. And then you have subcategories that have subcategories, and that'll help you to kind of get away from to-do lists and get more to the fulfillment list of doing the things that are going to actually move you forward. So for finance, personal finance, you should put in there that reviewing all of your monthly statements for your household. Go in there, because you might go to dinner and put a $10 tip, and the person enters at $100, and now your $20 dinner is $120. So reviewing your finances to know where your money goes is the same thing as what you should do before you go to the next podcast or whatever you're doing. You should stop for 20 minutes and think, what did I spend my time on in the last 3, 5, 7, 10 days? Where did my time go, and how much of a percentage of my time went there? And how did I feel about it? Did I get anything out of it? Did it juice me? Did it power me? Did I get fulfillment out of it? And if you do, great. But if you didn't, that's time that you can take back into your life. So when people say they don't have time, I always say that's probably not true. You're just using your time in places that aren't fulfilling.
That's actually very accurate. Well, time is infinite, so. And everybody has what did you say to me? Everybody has the same amount of time every day. It's how you utilize that and what you do with it. And how much sleep are you getting? And maybe you're getting too much sleep. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. But that's also a time block as well. All right, let's end this today. And I thank you for everything. I know it was hard to make this. This was a tough one for me because I'm very right brain, artsy, singer, whatever, intuitive. And so this is such left brain information. It's almost hurting my head right now. But if I can do this, anybody can do this. So I thank you for this topic today, and we'll get back to you next week with something cool.
Signing off. Have a wonderful, 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 wonderful day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.